Hi Year 7, welcome to Apple Crumble today. So the first thing you need to think about is the dish you want to make your apple crumble in. I'm going to make mine in one of these kind of Pyrex, it's called, baking dish, so it can go in the oven. My apple crumble will probably feed 4 people, so I'm going to double the ingredients that you have at home. So if you want to feed 4 people, double the amount of ingredients you have. Or you may well want to do it in a much smaller container, and you can put it in something like a foil tin, which is much smaller. Entirely up to you what you have at home to work with. So when setting your oven, make sure your shelf is halfway up through your oven, so the shelf is halfway, and then you want to set the temperature to 200 degrees Celsius. So the first stage of our apple crumble is to slice our apples. We're going to use our claw grip. We're going to grip the side of the apple, and we're going to cut down the side of the core. So we're going to just slice all the way down. So all I'm doing is pushing on my knife down until you've got one side of the apple cut. I'm going to flip round to the other side. Same thing. We're going to use claw grip to grip the side of our apple, making sure our fingers are well and truly out of the way of the blade of the knife, and then we're going to slice down. Again, you can see my fingers nowhere near, and pushing down so my knife is going to go onto the safety of the chopping board. Next, now I've got just the core and the 2 sides of my apple left, so I'm going to put my apple nice and flat. I'm going to see where the core of my apple is, and I'm going to cut straight down towards my chopping board, and the same on the other side. Now all I've got left is the core of my apple, which I don't need. I can throw that away. I'm left with 4 pieces of apple which I need to slice. So turning it on its side, claw grip again, I'm going to just slice down my apple so that every single slice is around the same thickness. We're looking for about 5 millimeters. We don't want something like this, which would give us one thin piece of apple and one chunky piece of apple, because otherwise when we cook the apple crumble, this will go super soft and soggy, and this will still be crunchy, so it will give the people eating your apple crumble a strange texture. So we want them all to be the same thickness where possible. If your apple gets really skinny and you can no longer hold it with your fingers being away from the blade, you can turn it and again slice towards so your fingers are not so close. So it's all about moving the apple slice so that it is not in contact with your fingers. If you get a super thin piece of apple that you want to cut, you can use bridge holes. You can go over the top of your apple and you can slice down the middle. Again, my fingers are nowhere near the blade because they're at the side and the blade is going down towards my chopping board, and you can cut that slice in half as well. So we're going to keep cutting until all of our apple is in slices. And then we're going to repeat this step for all of our apple. So if you are following the ingredients given, which is 2 apples, you're going to repeat this process for 2 apples, or if you're making slightly bigger portion for your family, you would repeat this process on 4 apples. Once you have sliced all of your apple, you can scoop it into a bowl, and if you have before that, you can put a spoonful of sugar over the top, a tablespoon of sugar. And you can even add a tablespoon of water as well. And then we're going to microwave our apples for about 60 seconds. If you don't have a microwave at home, you can just completely skip this stage and your apples can go straight into your baking tray. Once you've microwaved your apple slices, they can go straight into your baking dish. If you haven't got a microwave, and so you haven't microwaved your baking dish, then you can just skip the whole microwave stage and your raw pieces of apple can go straight into your baking dish. You want to spread them around so they're fairly equal. All that the microwave does is it just begins the cooking process, so they're extra super soft. But if you don't have a microwave, it's really not a problem. They're going to soften up in the oven anyway. So the next stage is to add your flour to your bowl. 100 grams if you're making for 2 people, 200 grams if you're making for 4 people. We then need to add the butter. So I've got some scales here as I'm measuring out, and you need to add 50 grams if you're making for 2 portions, or 100 grams if you're making for a family of 4. So almost there, 90 grams. Tiny bit more. There we go, 100 grams. Okay, the next stage is to do the rubbing in technique. So this is where we use the butter to coat the flour. That's what gives us a nice crumbly texture. If we use a wooden spoon and mix them together, we'll get like a cake texture, and that's not what we want for an apple crumble. We want the opposite. So instead, we have to do the rubbing in method, which works like this. You're going to use your thumb and your fingertips, and you're going to rub them along each other in this motion. So by the time you've finished, you shouldn't have any flour on the palms of your hands. It should just be on your fingertips. So you're going to get the butter and rub it in the flour in between your fingertips, so that you're breaking up the butter and you're rubbing it in together. So lots of times when I see people do this in the classroom, they do this and they grab it and they let go, and they grab it and they let go. That's not right. You want to rub it across your fingertips. So get the lumps and rub them across your fingertips to break up that butter. And you want to keep going until all of your butter is broken up. So all these big lumps, break them up and rub them into the flour. When you finish, you should have no large lumps of butter, and you should be left with a texture that looks like breadcrumbs. So when you've finished, you should have a bowl of breadcrumbs, or butter flour mixture that looks like breadcrumbs. If you give the bowl a little shake, if you've got any lumps left, they will come to the surface, and you can just finish rubbing them in to get rid of them, so that you are left just with the crumble. And you shouldn't have any flour on the palms of your hands, it should just be on your fingertips. At this stage, you can then add your sugar, which is 25 grams if you're doing it for just 2 portions, or 50 grams if you're doing it for 4 people. The reason why we don't add the sugar until later is because it goes super sticky when we try and do the rubbing in technique if we add it at the beginning, and you can just give that a really good mix. So make sure all of your sugar is combined in your crumble mixture. So the last step is just to sprinkle your crumble mixture over the top until it is evenly distributed and all of your apple is covered. The oven for 15 minutes until golden brown.